what was going on. But
thank you so much. Okay, we really appreciate it.
All right.
That we have. Today's Gemara is going to be one more Gemara in the series that we're learning about the sugya of dreams. Just a quick reminder for those of you who have been with us for the last few weeks. The end of Maseches Brachos talks about dreams. And every week we begin with the same statements that there's different types of dreams. You can be assured that 99% of our dreams that we have today have no important validity whatsoever. That 1% is what we've been discussing over the last few weeks. And today we have a statement of Reb Chanan. The Gemara is Brachos Nun Vav Amud Beis. It's exactly halfway down the page. Amar Reb Chanan Shalosh Shleimus Hein Nahar Tzipar Ukedera. That's the Gemara we're learning today. The Gemara says the following: Shalosh Shleimus Hein. Rashi translates it the following way: Shalosh Chaloimos Hamavasrim Shalom. There are three dreams that announce that Shalom is happening. There are three dreams that announce that Shalom is happening. One is Nahar, the second is Tzipar, the third is Kedera. In English, Nahar is a river, Tzipar is a bird, Kedera is a pot used specifically to boil water. Those are the three dreams that if you have them. So here again, I would like to say, my dear ladies and gentlemen, if tonight you dream of a bird, or you dream of a river, or you dream of a pot, it has no meaning because you just heard a class about it. Duh, hello. Obviously it has no meaning if you've just been thinking about it. The point is, if last night, if you had a dream about a river, you just saw a river, you saw the river as a symbol, and you went on the river, you just saw a river, then you know that that means that Shalom is about to begin. Let's say, God forbid, you're having a machlokas with your neighbor. God forbid the Shalom bias issues. God forbid that your country has a machlokas with another country. The bottom line is that these are what's called symbolic dreams. These symbolic dreams are brought down by malachim, by angels, and they're showing us into the future what is about to happen. Now, you will notice that the way this Gemara is structured is different from what we spoke about last week. Last week, we went through the 7 species. We say that, for example, if you see a pomegranate, that was the case that we spoke about because Rimo was connected to Miron. If you see a pomegranate, or if you see a fig, or if you see a grape, so each one of those things, if you see that individual thing, then the Gemara goes on and says what those different fruits represent into your future. Here, the Gemara begins with an announcement. There are 3 types of Shalom. There are 3 types of peace. And all the Achronim latch on, and they say that this Gemara is actually announcing that peace can be divided into 3 categories. In other words, it's not a symbol that is telling you what is about to happen. It's not what's called a remez, a hint to what is happening. It is not like what I said in my first class, that when you sleep, you enter into the world of imagination. The imagination always anchors itself on symbolism. That's how the imagination works. It's much more than that. You're actually seeing the essence of peace. A river is not a hint to peace. It is peace. A pot is peace. A bird is peace. And this is an essay from the Maharal of Prague. So you all know the Maharal has a sefer called Nesivos Olam. It's divided into subcategories. One of them is called Nesivos Shalom, and that is built around this dream. And he goes through the Maharal's derech of how to understand the Gemara at hand. We are going to be learning today the derech of the Vilna Gaon, and with my Rebbe's explanations from Moshe Shapiro. It is absolutely mind-blowing how the Vilna Gaon learns this Gemara. But before I begin the Vilna Gaon, I want to make the following statements. At the back of your Gemara, there's a commentary called the Malay Royim. Most of it is basically fixing the language of the Gemara. And he asked a question that those of you that were here last week should be asking. Last week, when we went through the 7 species, the very first one was chita. And it says, if you see chita in a dream, it is a symbol for shalom. And the obvious question is, if the next page that if you see wheat, that is Shalom. Why over here you have these three categories and they represent Shalom? Why isn't wheat in this listing over here? And he doesn't answer the question, but I, Menachem Nissel, think that the answer is obvious based on this Rashi and the way the Maharal is learning this Rashi. Our Gemara is not giving us an exhaustive listing of things that show us what Shalom is going to happen. Rather, this Gemara is defining Shalom and using, so to speak, dreams as the vehicle to tell us what Shalom is all about. The bottom line is, everything you need to learn about Shalom is there in these three words: Nahar, a river; Sipar, a bird; Kedera, a pot. In those three things, you have the essence of everything you need to know what Shalom is all about. So, once upon a time, when I was your age, when I say I was your age, I've got to be careful because I see some of you are basically close to my age. Mike, I don't know how old you are, but the bottom line is that when I was going through Shidduchim, so the go-to book at that time then was a book called, and if you can see this, it was called The River, the Kettle, and the Bird by Aaron Feldman. Aaron Feldman is today the Rosh Hashiva of Ner Yisrael, Rabbi Aaron Feldman. In those days, he was a Rebbe in Ar Sameach, and he was big stuff then as well. That was the go-to book on Shalom Bayis at that time then. It was called The River, the Kettle, and the Bird. Now, what's interesting is that at the back of my Mesifta Gemara, so I had this like big fat Gemara Brachos, at the back, it has 10 different ways of learning the three words Nahar, Kedera, and Sipar. There's 10 different Mahalchim from 10 different Achronim, and the way that he learns it is basically novel. He claims it's based on the Gra, and it's not exactly the Gra, but it doesn't make any difference. I'm going to tell you a quick summary of everything that Reb Aaron Feldman says in his introductory chapter, because it will help give us a basis for the Mahalach of the Gra. So here we have, for those of you that are just joining us, here's a quick summary of everything you need to know about Shalom Bayis. And he says that there's three types of marriages. There's a marriage called a river, there's a marriage called a pot, and there's a marriage called a bird. What does this mean, these three types of marriages? So if you are aware, most of the world, the great cities are built on water. Why is that? Because of commerce. That's the classic way that commerce is. So Mike Ravinsky lives on the great Mississippi. So did my wife. My wife grew up in Memphis. I remember when I came to Memphis for the first time, my father-in-law said to me, he says, Memphis was the third biggest city on the Mississippi. And I was just straight from London, and I was trying to keep a straight face because obviously I wanted to make an impression on my father-in-law. But oh my gosh, the third biggest city on the Mississippi, woohoo. And then he went on to tell me that they handle about 50% of America's melon crops. The bottom line is that that's the way it is. You are on I see over here, there's a young lady from Minneapolis. That is also, if you get on the water over there, you go downstream, you're going to end up in Memphis. That's the way it is. It is the artery, the major artery of the United States of America. That's the way it is. I grew up in London on the Thames. If you grew up in Paris, you'd be on the Seine River. All the great rivers connect different cities, but the cities have nothing to do with each other. All they do is cooperate with each other. In other words, it is a marriage of cooperation. The idea of a marriage of cooperation means that you do your own thing, and the other cities that are on that river cooperate with you for mutual benefit. The example today would be an organization like the UN, the United Nations. Each country has no interest in the other country. It's just that the UN helps them serve their own interests. So they have what's called this cooperation over here. And I have to throw in over here a little bit of my own thoughts over here. Obviously, today in the 21st century, every female, when she goes into a marriage today, they will have a job. Not always, but 90% of young ladies today go into their jobs, into their marriage with some kind of a parnasa, which, by the way, is a great thing, because today, if you want to have a big family, you want to pay for tuition, you're going to have to probably need a double income. That's just the way the world works. But the mindset that comes from the secular world and is something that us Jews should be nervous of. You don't need a job because you must go into a marriage with a mindset of, I have to be independent of my husband, that I don't want to ever be in a situation where I need his income to be able to support me. That is wrong. That is not a Torah approach to why you go in and have a profession. It is good to have a profession, but it's not so that I need to be able to live the marriage of a river. And Rav Aaron Feldman writes that halavai, that every single American marriage would be a river. You wouldn't have a 50% divorce rate. But the bottom line is that this kind of a marriage means that I'm independent, you're independent, we're under the same roof, we cooperate together. That is where it ends. That is the minimum form of what's called Shalom bias in Rav Aaron Feldman's book. Level number 2 is called the pot, the kedera. What is a kedera? The kedera is what we do with the classic kedera is what boils water. So you think about it. You have over here, imagine this was a pot. Thank you, Reb Dave, once again. Imagine underneath here, what goes over here is fire. What goes in over here, it happens to be coffee, but let's pretend it was water. So you all know that that water, that was a Freudian slip, that water and fire do not work together. Water and fire the truth of the matter is they're opposites on so many different levels. But the point is that with the pot, they do much more than cooperate. Each one is dependent on the other to produce whatever the pot is supposed to produce. In this case, and whatever it is, if eventually this is going to end up as a cholent on your Shabbos table, so the pot allows a harmony between the two sides, so that they are not just that they're not just cooperating, that they're codependent. So, for example, if you run a business organization or you run a sports team or anything that involves different people have different roles, and the lump sum is what makes the organization into what it is. So somebody does research and somebody does finance and somebody does whatever, their personnel. So that is how an organization is. In a sports team, I can only talk about the only sports that I know, which is British soccer. So you have a goalkeeper, and then you have a forward, and then you have the midfield, and you have the defense. So together you have the team. So in a marriage, that would be that one is again, I'm using cliches. I'm not telling you how to run your marriage, but I'm using cliches. The cliche is one makes money, the other runs the home. So each one needs each other to be able to be successful. And that is level 2. That's called the level of the kettle. But Aaron Feldman points out that if you go into a marriage and you see the following, let's get to level 2, because you have what I don't have. I have a skill, you have a skill. Some of you may know there's a book called That's Why I Married You. Okay, the idea of the book is that people go into a marriage seeing strengths in their partner that they do not have, and they see that is what is going to bring out my strength. And that's a very good thing. If one is an extrovert, the other is an introvert, one is organized and the other is more creative. So that is perfect for a marriage. But the problem is that this is high risk, that the moment that the kids are out the house, so afterwards you forget why you got married. And this is why empty nesters have such a high divorce rate, because you focused on the fact that you work together as a team to build the house. But when the house is gone, the kids are out the house, so everything falls apart. Which brings us to level 3. The level 3 is the bird. The bird is not two things that are dependent or that are cooperating. The bird is one animal that is simultaneously comfortable in both the sky and both the earth. The sky and the earth would be symbolic of male and female domains, but the bird is one creature. The bird is the marriage that naturally goes up and down seamlessly. And that is the Jewish concept of marriage. That's level number 3, which we call v'hayu lebasar echad. When two people become one flesh, the Zohar tells us one flesh means one neshama, and you fuse and you become two halves of a whole. That's the level where Rabbi Yosef Chaim Sonnenfeld, when he went to the doctor and said, "Our foot hurts." When he said, "Our foot hurts," he wasn't being cutesy. That's how he felt. My wife's pain is my pain. That is what you and I strive in our marriages, is to reach that point where we're not two people, we're actually one person, and not just on a Kabbalah level, but we feel that way, and we go into our old age way past when the kids are at the house. This is something I have to share with you, because Corona has meant that there was, I have 2 kids living in the house, but one's in yeshiva, but he was sent back here. They both went crazy being with middle-aged parents. So at one point, they went to different siblings just to get out of the house. And it's my wife and myself. We ain't going anywhere. And it reminded me of Rabbi Zachariah Wallerstein. Shlita told me last year. Zachariah, when we were in the car together, and he said to me, if you got a great marriage, it's Gan Eden. If you've got a bad marriage, then empty nester, it is Gehenna. And it's so true, because as I now tell my students, most of your married life, you're going to be grandparents. You're going to be that age when normal kids do not want to hang out for too long in your house. So you better work on the tzipar, on that level where everything is feeding off each other, meaning that you feel yourselves as two halves of a whole. I want to point out, there's a pasuk in Malachi that says that v'haya eishes chavercha v'eishes brisecha. So in Malachi, in Perek Beis, pasuk Yudalad, it says that the marriage is called a bris. Now, the word bris is an interesting thing, because the Gra tells us the essential nature of a bris is that each party gives to the other one something that is essentially part of your essence. So let's say in the bris milah, the child gives God the blood, and Hashem gives the child his guarantee that you will live a world of you will live l'mala min hateva. So each guy per side gives something that is their essence. So a woman is called Eishes Brisecha because the default of the marriage from the Torah viewpoint is that of the birds, where each one gives the other their essence. So it's not give and take, it's give and give. Each side is giving to their own essence. And that's the way that a marriage is supposed to be. One last thing before we start the Gra, the way that I want to teach it, which is the main body of the class. One more thing is that the Sfarim bring down that the word bris comes from the word bria. So when you have two halves and each one gives part of their essence to the other side, so literally the two become three. In other words, as we say in marriage, again, this is not a marriage class, but we say in marriage 1 and 1, I don't know, we say, this is what I say. In marriage, 1 and 1 does not equal 2, but 1 and 1 equals a bias. It's a different chefza. That bias is the bria chadasha that comes from the bris of Eishes Brisecha. So let me summarize everything I've said so far. Today's class, we are learning 3 words in the Gemara in Brachos, that if you dream of either a river, or you dream of what's called a pot, or you dream of what's called a bird, so you are seeing peace. You're seeing peace. And we've just learned together through the book, once again, okay, I don't even know if this book exists in the stores anymore. This book, it's Mike's nodding his head, us old folks would know, but this book is what was the go-to book when I was dating. I had to read it before I went under the chuppah. That was the book back in the day for marriage advice, and that's the river, the kettle, and the river, the kettle, and the bird, which is 3 levels. Number 1 is called cooperation. Number 2 is called codependence, and number 3 is called unity. Those are the 3 different types of shalom. Okay, let's take a deep breath, because I'm going to ask you all to put on your seatbelts. Yeah, this is seriously, this is going to freak you out a little bit. The way I decided to give the share, the gra, is to disconnect the practical, easy to connect to the Kabbalah part. So this is my theory. My theory is that in about 20 minutes, the real heroes will still be in this class. In the last 10 minutes, we're going to learn. I'm going to teach you in simple language some incredibly powerful ideas that are steeped in Kabbalah, and they're from this gra. So everything, I don't know if you ever see this, but you probably have this in your library. You never opened it up. It's the gra and Brachos. There's two gras and Brachos. One is called the Imrei Noam, which is more like a collection, and it's very, very easy to read. But this one is literally 2/3 of it is Kabbalah ideas, and if you can have someone hold your hand and walk you through it, which is I'm going to do this with you now. These ideas are incredibly, incredibly powerful and inspiring at the same time. So let us begin. Every single one of you, if you look at the room that you're in, okay, look at the room that you're in. If you are in a normal room, which means you have basically 6 sides, meaning you have what's in front of you, what's behind of you, what's to the left, what's to the right, what's above, and what's below. That is the 6 dimensions that the world spreads out. It's called, in the language of the Gra over here, panim v'achar. All right, panim v'achar means from the word panim, what is in front of you. Achar is what is behind you. So when you walk into a room, most rooms, okay, you walk in, the door is now behind you, and in front of you is the wall at the other end. Let's talk about a shul or a classroom or whatever it may be. So you got behind you and you've got in front of you. As you walk in, you'll also see there's a left and a right. So you look at your left and you look at your right. That's going to be what we're going to call axis number 2 in a room. And the third one is called up and down. It's an interesting thing. When you walk into a room, rarely do you look up. I would not be shocked if you have no idea, if you have, I don't know how to say retivot in Hebrew, in English anymore. You don't know what's going on in your ceiling. You have no idea. Most of the places, let's say, think now where you work. Think now where your workplace is. Do you know what your roof looks like? Probably not. You don't think about these things unless you're lying in bed. You look at your ceiling. You don't think about your ceiling. Your ceiling is above and the floor is below. That, if you're going to invest in home decoration, is going to be the last thing on your mind, because no one looks up and down. People look forward. That's the first thing you look at. The second thing is you look left and right. And the third and final thing is that you look up and down. Let us retranslate the 3 dimensions of space. In other words, everything that God created has got in the physical world, has got what's called in the language of the Gra, Gimel Hafachim. There are 3 natural opposites in the world. One is called panim v'achar. Panim v'achar is symbolic of what's called makar v'tachlis. Makar means source, and tachlis means where everything is going to. So in life, your birth is your makar, and your tachlis is the Garden of Eden, is olam haba. In everything, you start a journey, wherever it may be, whether it's a career or it's a vacation or it's a marriage or whatever it be, you start off with a source and you go towards where your plan is, where you want this to go to. That is axis number 1. The second axis is called Yamin and Small. So Yamin and Small, the Gra decodes Yamin and Small. All of life is broken into left and right. Left in Hebrew is called Midas Hadin, and right is called Midas HaChesed. For the moment now, we're going to give it the simple translation. All of life is either strictness or softness. It's either the Midah of Chesed, which means outreach, or the Midas of Din, which means inreach, which means the ability to focus on your inner world. The whole world is either what's called the Chesed of Abraham or the Gevura of Yitzhak Avinu. That is axis number 2. So life number 1 is a journey. Life number 2 is choices that you constantly make between Gevura and Chesed, as we're going to explain in detail in a few moments. And the third is up and down. So up and down is very simple, is Shemaim Ba'aretz. Shemaim symbols the spiritual worlds, pure spirituality, pure ruchnius, and Aretz, Hashemayim, Shemayim L'Hashem, V'aretz Nasan Livnei Adam, is the physical world where we work in and we toil and we deal with the earth together with the other 3 components of the world, which is Eish and Mayim and Avir, and it's pale on the earth. It's the physicality of the world. That's down here. And Shemayim is pure Ruchnius. So those three dimensions, they are the only three dimensions in the initial birth of creation. Those are the three axes of absolutely everything. And if we can now bring out our inner Breslas, Kol ha'olam kulai, Geshet Tzara'od. Everything we do in life is a Geshet Tzara'od. We are always choosing between our past and our future. We're always choosing between Yamin and small Gvura and Chesed, and we're always choosing between up and down. Those are the three continuous, never-ending dimensions of everything that we have in this world over here. So now let's break this down and translate this into the language of our personal lives. Let's start off with Panim V'Acho. So everyone knows their basic Koheles, this basic Koheles. Perek Aleph, Pasuk Zayin, the 7th verse in Koheles. Kol ha'nacholim holchim el hayam. All rivers end up in the sea, which means the following thing. The way HaKadosh Baruch Hu runs the world is that a nahar, a river, symbolizes the journey of life, because the nahar begins with a source. So the source can either be a ma'ayan or a bar, could be some kind of a water source under the ground. The source could also be the snow that melts in mountains. But the bottom line is that the great Mississippi, which goes all the way up to Minneapolis or wherever it may be, the sources, the Mississippi breaks into different rivers up there. The Missouri, I think it breaks into a bunch of rivers. But by the time it comes down past St. Louis, past Memphis, Tennessee, and down into New Orleans, by then it's a mile wide, and it goes into the Gulf of Texas, and from there it goes into the Atlantic. The Atlantic, the ocean called the Atlantic, and the Pacific, and the Indian Ocean is called the Yam. The Yam is Gematria 50. It symbolizes infinity. At the end, all journeys end up in the world of beyond, in the world outside. Let me just step back and say this in simple language over here. All journeys of life is from the number 1 to 49. This is why Spheris HaOmer is a microcosm of the whole world. There's many Sfarim talk about it. The journey from Pesach to Shavuos is the same journey of from beginning to time to the end of the time. The Naha, the river of life that Kadosh Baruch Hu created, all ends up at the Yam. The Yam is Gematria Yud, Mem is Gematria 50. That is the end of the road. That is the world of Har Sinai. Har Sinai is outside of this world. Har Sinai is not anchored in physicality at all. Har Sinai is a place that we don't know where it is physically, and we don't know when it was given in time. So it's outside of time. It has no date, and it's outside of space. It has no physical location. And there, Klal Yisrael reached this Garden of Eden status, and we received the Torah. In the same way it is with our lives. Our lives is a journey 149. It is a nahar. It is a river. It goes from our past and goes into our future. The end of the nahar, it spills out into a world called beyond, into the world called ocean. And that is the first and most basic awareness of what our lives are all about. So how does this translate into our own lives? I have to point out, the next 2 minutes is Menachem Nissel speaking. The Gra doesn't explain this. This is how I understand what it means, the Shalom, the peace called the Nahar. The peace that everyone has to make is the constant need to harmonize our roots with our fruits. Anyone that works at Chinuch, and I'm looking at the names of the people in front of me, which is everybody. Every person that I know over here, you all are educators, and that's it. So you know that this is the hardest journey that every single one has to take, is when do you, so to speak, you let go of your past, and when do you embrace your future? And the answer is a Jew never ever completely disconnects from the past, and a Jew never ever completely forgets his future. When I was a yeshiva bacher. I spent time hanging out in yeshiva called Eshet Torah, mainly for one reason only. I wanted to catch up with Reb Noach Weinberg, just out of interest. I don't know if Reb Noach Weinberg's name means anything to you, except for the older folks over here. But Reb Noach said to me, Menachem, he says, I want you to sit and learn for as many years as possible. Here's what he said to me. He told me to wait out before I go into Kiruv and learn for as many years as possible. I told this to Jonathan Rosenblum, who wrote a book on Reb Noach, and he put it in without mentioning my name, but it's a chiddush. But the bottom line is, I remember him one Friday night, he said to us the following thing. He says, the whole world is divided into three animals. Klal Yisrael is the sheep, the goyim that symbolize Western civilization. They are what's called the chazir, the pig, and Eastern civilization, they are what's called the gamal, the camel. Basically, we're talking about Esav, Yishmael, and Klal Yisrael. Klal Yisrael is in the middle. Esav is on one side, and Yishmael is on the other side. What's so interesting is that the pig always has its feet sticking out into the future, and it's a mindset of Western civilization to break out of your past and just focus on your future. This is how he explained it. He said, if you go to university, they're always trying to show that the last professor was wrong and that they're right, that what we learned in our past is no longer in, and we go into the new phase. It's always progress. It's always progress. The Yishmael, which is the today, I guess, the Arab/Persian mindset, they are obsessed with their past because they are the gamal. The gamal is constantly regurgitating their food back and back and back, and they're always talking about the great Saladin and the great victories of our past, and this is what they're into. They're very, very retro focused. And these two mindsets in Klal Yisrael, we say each one on their own is puzzle, is wrong. We always try and balance. So the sheep has both. The sheep has a past, and the sheep has a future as well, and that's the Jewish way of looking at it. If you would ask me for a quick Sheva Brachos var, so this is something I always like to say. If you don't like it, it's because it's my own idea. We say that if you're mesameach chasam v'kala, kilabana churba achas b'Yerushalayim. Churba means you rebuilt a destroyed entity. Achas literally means that is unique. And I always say that Jews, this I heard from my Rebbe, this particular line, I heard it from Reb Shmaryahu Meltzer, Shlita. He says, Jews always build on ruins, meaning they always build on their past. The Nusach, every single one of you, the ladies, if you ask me, what is your cooking style? Don't deny it. The foundation block is mama. Then afterwards, you have your own style that you built on that. But the foundation is what you saw in your mother's kitchen. And that's the way it is. All we do, we build on the past, and then achas. Achas means it's unique. So a young couple come in with 4 parents. Those 4 parents is the makar of their river. And the journey that they do is the achas, what they create, that shalom that takes them into the future. So that is what's called level number 1 of shalom. Shalom is the constant harmonizing of your past into your future. Constantly asking yourself, what makes me different from my past? And what makes me reconnect to my past? And how do I harness that into the future of my life? That is the first shalom. The second shalom is called yamin and small. So here we are going back to the pot. The pot, if you remember, is the harmony between fire and between water. So a quick reminder of what fire and water is all about. In Jewish symbolism, fire is midas hadin and water is midas ha-chesed. Avram was mayim, Yitzchak was eish. Mayim and eish are both phenomenal gifts from HaKadosh Baruch Hu, as long as they're harmonized by the pa. If not, they wage war against each other, and the fire tries to put out the water, and the water tries to put out the fire, and they are in constant tension. But the pot tells us that the genius knows how to harmonize them. which is exactly Yaakov Avinu, we're going to get to that in a moment, is the ability to take two opposites and to figure out a way of reconciling the world of din and the world of chesed. So let's talk this through on a personal level just for a few minutes. Look at the nature of water. Water reaches out. Do not practice this in your own backyard. Rav Shmuel Eisman, do not do this after the class. I'm begging you. Do not open up the taps in your bath and just walk out for a couple of hours, because Shmuel, your mother will greet you with a knife. Okay, it will not be a pretty sight. Water will come pouring out, and the destructive nature of water is that it reaches out. It reaches out to absolutely everything. Water will find every single nook and cranny in your house and will connect to everything. Just like on a global level, the water in front of London and the water in front of St. Louis and the water in Savannah, I'm sure you're on a river, Ellie Loeb, I don't know which river it is, but all those, and the water on the Ottawa River, all those waters can somehow or rather connect. So you can take a boat and every single water thing can be connected. Water connects everything. That's the way it is. You see, Shmuel, I know my customers. Water connects everything. So now, that is why water is so dangerous. You get a marriage, I always tell a kala, I tell my female students, watch out for a guy that's kulei chesed. Why? Because someone is kulei chesed, all he does is he reaches out. You don't want him reaching out to your female friends. You don't want him reaching out to absolutely everybody. Chesed can easily spill over to the distortion of chesed, which is yishmal, which is immoral behavior, which is why people who are bali chesed are high risk to have problems in this area. That's it. If you're married to a poet, or you're married to a musician, or you're married to anyone that is just pure chesed, that doesn't, this gives and gives and gives. So they are high risk in this area. That is why you want it balanced with the other side. You want a shalom with the other. What's din? Din is, so to speak, harshness, is like YESOD Avinu, is the ability to be disciplined and the ability to be in control of your inner thoughts and your inner actions. So that is also a beautiful, beautiful midah. But it is compared to fire. Fire is harsh. Fire breaks everything down to, instead of connecting, it disconnects everything. Too much fire, you disconnect from the people around you, the people that you love. You start using your self-control to control others. The ultimate distortion of controlling others is violence and ultimately murder, which is why Rav Hutner famously said the following words: a gutta is a noyef. A fruma is a ritzeach. As was darf man sein, guten frum. That's what he used to say. Let me translate that into English. A person with a good heart, he is a immoral. He is an adulterer. He's a noyef, meaning he's high risk. A person who is a fruma. Fruma is the Yiddish term for a person who's very, very frum and self-disciplined. He's a ritzeach. He can be a murderer. He can hurt the people around him. So what should a person be? Good and from. You got to find balances. That's the shalom of the kedera. That's the shalom of the pot. And again, since I'm looking at a bunch of educators, look out for those people who are too giving. Also, people who are giving, they're easy to take advantage of. It can be so quickly unhealthy. They don't know boundaries. And people who are too frum and they're too harsh, they too, you need to look out for those people and try and show them that there is a middle way. Every person who I'm looking at, you are probably 70-30 or 60-40, which is a healthy kind of a balance. That you're more on one side. The best thing is to be 60-40 on one side and your spouse is 60-40 on the other side. That's a recipe for a very healthy type of marriage. But the bottom line is that's the kedera. That is level number 2. Level number 3, which is in a sense the hardest of all, is the up and down dimension, is the bird. And that is that the third and final level is what's called is what's called the tzipar, Shemayim, and Aretz. So here we have to recognize that our lives are divided into two departments. There's the Ruchnius and there's the Gashmius. Now, let's make things simple. Ruchnius in our lives would be, for example, the synagogue, the shul, the Beis HaMedrash, the study halls. Those are places that are pure, unadulterated Ruchnius. In a sense, Shabbos is a day in the week in time that symbolizes a day where you focus on Ruchnius. 6 days of the week would be all Gashmius. But everything has to be done in a proportion, because the goal is to go back into the Gashmius, is to go back into the physical world, and to anchor the physical using your spiritual tools to try and elevate this physical world. Which means that the challenge of us is to basically enter into physicality with the spirituality that we have, and to be able to elevate that. This is a never, ever ending challenge. How do you balance this out? How much time do you spend in the Beis HaMedrash? How much time do you spend davening? Shabbos is only one day. Yom Tovim adds a few more days to the calendar, but then you got to step out. Every time it says Shabbos, in the same pasuk, it says 6 days you should work. Because the goal of Shabbos is ultimately to anchor the 6 days into that world of Shabbos, but you need to go back into that world. After Pesach, you go back into the world of Chametz. That's the way it's supposed to be. You've got to go back into those physical dimensions and use those resources called heaven to try and take the earth and to elevate this. That is the tzipor. The tzipor knows how to go up and down. You watch a bird. By the way, once again, during Corona, I spent a lot of time. We have with Zocha, Baruch Hashem, I never missed a minyan, except for once or twice, which was got nothing to do. There was always minyanim. Yerushalayim has had the schus that we've always had minyanim. Maybe because my kids grew up in shuls that they never, ever, ever saw anyone talking. Could be, I don't know. I'm just guessing. It could be radical what I'm saying. But Yerushalayim, Baruch Hashem. I'm talking about legal minyanim. You know, we had the mirpeset minyanim, now the social distancing with the mask. Everything was based on government guidelines. But the bottom line is that I spent a lot of time davening outside the last month and noticing birds. It's just an incredible thing. You don't notice the birds, generally speaking, because you're always in a rush. Now I spend a lot of time outside. I see all these birds who are on their way to fly, hover over the Kotel Ma'aravi. That's where they're all heading. These big flocks of birds constantly that fly over Yerushalayim because they feel the Kedusha. And then you've got Mother Earth. You've got the physical world that you try and elevate. Okay. I have not left myself enough time. I apologize. And I'm about to say things. This is what I'm going to do now. I'm going to take everything that we just learned, and I'm going to translate it into the world of Pnimius, into the world of Kabbalah. Everything I'm teaching you over the next couple of minutes is what's called Rashi Prakim. That's called the foundations that are easily accessible. Otherwise, I will get, okay, my friends will come in, they will shoot my head off for teaching this stuff over here. I'm teaching you things that are easily accessible, which means I haven't discovered America to tell you that Akash Baruch Hu created the world with what's called the 7 spheros. The 7 spheros of creation are the 7 spiritual emanations from the higher worlds down to the lower worlds, which we said last week, they're basically tools of how we're supposed to perfect the world. So those 7 tools are called the 7 spheros. What I did not mention last week, I'm going to mention to you now that those 7 tools have 3 roots. So just like, for example, Eretz Yisrael has got 7 species and has got 3 water sources that the psukim in Parshas Ekev talk about. They talk about Mayonis, Tahimos, and I forgot the third one. And they all come out as 7. So you always have, whenever you see the number 7, you always have behind that the number 3. So, for example, you have the 7 weeks of Nechama have always got the 3 weeks of Peronios. Whenever you see 7s, there's always a 3 hidden somewhere behind it. So that's the way HaKadosh Baruch Hu created the world. There's 3 what's called root. You've got roots, and you've got 7 fruits of the spheros. Now, what I want to share with you for today's class is what you need to know is that these 10 spheros are broken down into 3, 3, and 3. you've got the first three, which is called Chachma, Bina, and Das. That's where the Chabad movement get their acronym from. They was called the hidden ones there, so to speak, in the world of the intellect. Everything's happening in what's called in Kabbalistic language the Mochim, Chachma, Bina, and Das. Those are the first three. The second three is called Chesed and Gevura. That's called the top half of the body, Chesed, Gevura, and then Tiferes. So Avram and Yitzchak, and then Yaakov Avinu, so to speak, he creates the harmony between the two. So each of these triangles, and the third one is called Netzach and Hod, which is Moshe and Aaron, and then YESOD, which is what I want to talk about for a few minutes, which is Yosef Hatzadik, which is YESOD. So what you have is, you've got the three triangles representing the three parts of the body, the head, the top half, and the lower half. And you have the head, so to speak, is divided between the right side and the left side, and the das that brings them together. And then you have the right hand and the left hand in the top half of the body, and then you've got the right foot and the left foot, and then what brings together those things, which is called the midah of Yesod, which is Keneged Yosef Hatzadik. In the language of the Holy Sfarim, the number 3 in the triangle is called the matkala. The matkala means in the Hebrew, it's an Aramaic from mishkal. It balances out. It creates shalom between the three. It harmonizes two things that don't work together, chachma and bina, and then das brings them together. So let's go through this very, very briefly, because I want to talk about Yosef Hatzadik for a few minutes. Without explaining what chachma and bina actually is. Chachma is always the root, and bina is always the fruit. Chachma is always what's called achar, and bina is always called panim. So you go from the chachma to bina, that's the river. That's the journey of the river. The river is the journey of life from chachma to bina. Chachma is the initial wisdom. Bina is what breaks it down into the real world, into the world that we're trying to get into. So the das is the ability to have the harmony between chachma and bina. It's the journey of life. The next is what we spoke about, is decision making. So you've got Avram, Yitzchak, and Yaakov, Chesed, Gevura, and then Tiferes. Okay, Tiferes literally means splendor, but it also means harmony. It also means the ability to reconcile different things and make it into a one. An artist is always Tiferes. An artist is always the ability to take the dark colors and the light colors and put them all together, that everything seems to fit into this beautiful, beautiful, beautiful harmony. So Tiferes, which is harmony, is the ability to take opposites and reconcile. That is exactly the pot, is the kedera. The kedera comes along and takes Aish and takes Mayim that cannot work together and says, yes, you can work together and you can form this incredible harmony. And then, just by the way, I just tell you, I'm skipping out tons of this, the Gra over here, just because I was so blown away by this Vilna Gaon. He says that he uses this last thing about Aish and Mayim and the Aish and Mayim and the Matkala, which is the pot. He says that is in Parshas Miketz, that's the Sar HaMashkim, that's the Sar the Sar Mashkim, the Sar Ha'ifim. So the cook uses fire, the Sar Mashkim uses water, and Yosef comes in and works them out, and he comes from the home of the Sar HaTabachim, which is, he says, that's the Kedera, that's the pot that allows the two to work together. Thirdly and finally, we have Netzach, Hod, and Yesod. So Netzach is something that I taught you last week. What is Netzach and Hod? I'm using the language of last week. Netzach is pure light. That's Moshe Rabbeinu. That's the pure iris of the higher worlds. Hod, remember my definition of Hod from last week. Hod is light that breaks out of darkness. That's the ability to find Ruchnius and Gashmius. Hod comes from the earth and breaks upwards. So Netzach is the light that comes down, and Hod is the light that goes up from the physical earthiness and goes up. What is Yesod? Yesod is the ability to harmonize Netzach and Hod. That is Yosef Hatzadik. That's the bird. The bird can go up and down between Netzach and Hod. Now, out of the three, at this point in the class, you all know with 100% clarity that the greatest shalom of all is the midah of Yesod, is Yosef HaTzadik. He, more than any other person in history, symbolizes shalom, and YESOD is the mystical midah that more than anything else represents shalom. I just want to make a little point. There's a lot of words in Hebrew that they connect to each other. For example, when I say that Yaakov is Tiferes, so Tiferes connects with Din, Tiferes connects with Emes, Tiferes connects with Rachamim. When I say the word Chesed, which is Avram Avinu, so Chesed connects with an Chashem Hagdula. These are different words that connect. YESOD goes with Shalom. YESOD goes with Shalom. That is the midah of YESOD. So, for example, the last three brachos of the Shemona Esrei, Ritzei, and Modim, and Sim Shalom. Ritzei, which is the base of Migdash, is Netzach. Modim is obviously Hod, like Modim and Hod. And then Sim Shalom, that is YESOD. That's the last three. Just like the first three is Avram, is Birkas Magen Avram. Yitzchak is Magen, is Mechaya Mesim, and then Yaakov is Kadosh. That's how it works. So you have the first three brachos of Shemona Esrei is Chesed, Gevurah, Tiferes, and the last three are Netzach, Hod, YESOD. YESOD is always going to be Shalom. Why is Yosef the key to Shalom? So this is really my take-home message to every single one of you. There's a Kabbalistic approach, and then there's the practical approach. The Kabbalistic approach is that YESOD refers to the moment of creation of life. When you create life, a man and a woman have shalom between them, they create life. So at the same moment, they are creating something physical and spiritual. The birth of a child is the mother's contribution, the father's contribution, but also the neshama that comes from upstairs. And the new child that is being created is the shalom of these three forces. That is the essence of midas YESOD in Kabbalah. But on a practical level, when we talk about YESOD, YESOD means the foundations. I have in front of me one of the Kabbalah Sfarim is called the Shari Ira. By the way, I don't know if you ever saw this book, Sfartim Lechem. It's basically the seven spheros, but broken down into its micro parts. I honestly do not recommend the Sefer at all, because I'm a Talmud of Rav Wolbe, and Rav Wolbe said that all this Kabbalah stuff is useless if it's not something that really makes sense on a practical level. And no offense to the Sefer, but no one in our generation, except for maybe hidden tzaddikim, have any shaykhs to this level of depth that is out there. But the point is, in generalities, we see the seven midos and the seven different things that we're supposed to work on. The word YESOD literally means the foundations of a home. That's what the Shari Ira brings down in Shar Beis. The Shari Ira is a Kabbalah Sefer, and that is the foundations of a Jewish home. That is what Yosef HaTzadik gave us. But why is Yosef Netzach and Hod? Because Netzach is the home that is the home of perfection. The Hod is when the home faces darkness, which is what every single Jewish home in the era of the internet has to deal with. Our home is under attack, and more than ever, we need Yosef HaTzadik, who is the one that knows how to take everything and to harmonize things. I'm about to daven Shacharis. In Shacharis, we say the words, L'cha Hashem Hagdula, Gevura, Tiferes, Netzach, Hahod, L'cha Hashem Kichol B'Shamayim V'Aretz, L'cha Hashem HaMamlacha. The seven midos doesn't use the word YESOD, it uses the word Kichol B'Shamayim V'Aretz. So YESOD is the perfect harmony of Shemayim V'Aretz. So I'm looking over here at some of the ladies over here. If you go to the Shabbos table of Rebbetzin Romanov, so you will see a fusion of heaven and earth. That's the way it is. It looks like the Mishkan. In the Mishkan, you had the Lechem upon him, which represents the Shabbos table. In the Mishkan, you had the Menorah, which represents the Shabbos candles, or the Torah that is being learned. And you have the Keteris, which is the ambience. I'm saying things in simplicity. And then you've got the Kodesh Kodashim, which is where life is created. It's the hidden room that is the privacy between husband and wife, which is the makor of creation. So every Jewish bias is built on YESOD, is built on this ability to take heaven and earth and put it into a microcosm, into what's called a Jewish home. So let me summarize over here. I could keep going. I just don't want to go too long over here. There's so much to talk about. I thought about this. We are in Corona. We're forced to spend a lot of time in the bias. We're entering now the week of YESOD. The week of YESOD is the Shalom of Kikoba Shemayim of Aretz, is the ability to take a Jewish home and to keep it physical. Keep it physical means that the recipes should be delicious and there should be laughter in the home. And everything else, the physical dimension of the home should be 100% physical. And the home should be 100% spiritual at the same time. It should be a perfect harmony. They should be able to feed off each other in perfect harmony. That is the great challenge of the Yiddish home. And that is what Yosef Hatzadik taught us, because Yosef went out into a place called Mitzrayim, where there was so many things trying to destroy the Jewish home. And he said, no, I stay strong. I focus on the home that I grew up in, the home of Yaakov Avinu, and I can hold onto this without having to compromise at all. The bottom line is that the Jewish home with the Yosef Yesodos, that is Kedusha, Shemayim, and that is Aretz, Kikoba Shemayim of Aretz. Don't go give me 60 seconds more, because I would like, as I always try and do, I want to just blast your brains just a little bit. This is what the Gra says. The Vilna Gaon tells us, how beautiful is that? The word tzipar is Gematria 376, is exactly the same Gematria as Shalom. That's what the Gra says, but he keeps on going. And he gives us two more Gematrias over here. He says, Yosef is a bird, an oif is another way of saying it, tzipar, an oif is 156, Yosef is 156. And finally, this word, ki kol b'shamayim v'aretz. Ki kol is Gematria YESOD, is exactly the Gematria of YESOD. So he shows us that in the language of Gematrias, these ideas, these deep ideas of Yosef being the one that goes up and down, that shows us how to harmonize, so that in Mitzrayim, a Jew can still be kadosh and build his Yiddish home. The homes of the Jewish people in Mitzrayim remain kadosh despite everything that was going on in Egypt, only because of Yosef Hatzadik. In the schus of Vayar, Hayam, V'yanis, the sea splits because of Yosef, because Yosef is the ability, no matter how much the outside is trying to break down the walls, to be able to retain the Kedushas Habayis. That's the YESOD, the middle of YESOD. That's the week that we're entering into, the week of YESOD that started tonight. Chesed should be, and that is going to bring us, Be'ez Hashem, into Malchus and Matan Torah, Be'ez Hashem Yisbarach. I will see you all, God willing, next Thursday night. Thank you all for coming. Hopefully this should be this learning should be a true Ili Neshama for Mike's Rebbe, but most of all, for every single one of us. We should all be zeicher to build homes that are steeped in this harmony of Kedusha, of the Tzipar, this harmony of YESOD, of Kikol, and all our homes should come together. All our little Beis HaMikdash should come together to build the big Beis HaMikdash with the coming of Mashiach. Be'ez Hashem Yisbarach. I'll see you all in Yerushalayim, Rakedesh, this Sukkot. Thank you, Rav Moshe Freilich, once again for making this happening, and thank you all for coming.